Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. And before I start this video, quick disclaimer, I've forgotten my microphone cord. I'm on the road at the moment, so I'm having to make do with the laptop microphone. So quality obviously not as good, but we'll get there. So next week or so, 10 days, I'll just have to make do. So apologies in advance, but at the moment I'm recording in a room with quite a bit of wood. But let's get to the news proper. Filip Hrgovic, Zhang Zhilei, IBF final eliminator, not going ahead. So this is because Filip Hrgovic has withdrawn from the fight, currently Matchroom trying to find a replacement. And why has he withdrawn? Well, the reporting on this sort of suggests it's because of the death of his father, which occurred in April. And there was some stuff a few weeks back on Filip Hrgovic's social media. So if that is in fact the case, why he's pulled out, obviously traumatic incident in his life, I'm sure it has affected his training camp and his preparations. So I can understand why it's not going ahead, at least for the boxing fan side of thing. This matchup, getting that sort of mandatory situation sorted out, that was going to be good. But this will have to be for another day. So in terms of the IBF, so this one will probably be rescheduled. But it did get me thinking when this news broke, and because I'd read that the IBF's rules would allow this fight to be rescheduled. There was a situation in the WBC a few years ago. You may recall in 2017, Berman Stiverne was going to be facing Dominic Breazeale. It was going to be a final eliminator, and then Stiverne elevated to the main fight, so Eric Molina drafted in as a replacement. It was bumped down to an eliminator, but then what you had was Dominic Breazeale threatening legal action, saying, look, this was to be a mandatory fight, title eliminator, honor it. And ultimately, he became the mandatory challenger. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any of those sorts of shenanigans that occur, if Zhang Zhilei tries to force a position, tries to force the IBF's hand here. I don't know. I mean, I would like to see Zhang versus Hergovich, and that being a much more meaningful fight than whatever Zhang Zhilei will be facing this weekend at short notice. And we'll touch on that first and then get on to Hergovich. The whole situation with Zhang Zhilei still fighting on the card, I can understand it, wants to make use of the training camp. He wants to get the payday as well, because if he gets pulled off, probably he's going to be left out of pocket to some degree. So he gets the activity, gets a win, and it will be a win because they'll draft someone in, and it's not going to be very good. And if this is still to be the co-main event, because it was going to be, they're going to need to be better than some sort of, 9-13 journeyman. But I'm not holding my breath. I think whatever happens here is going to be a bit of a soft touch, and perhaps this fight will be, the Zhang's fight will be bumped down the card a bit. So it's not a card that's stacked with heaps and heaps of good fights that you go, wow, it's mouth-watering. And this was one of them as the co-main event, Hergovich and Zhang. That did actually go, there's something on the line here. This is meaningful. This means something in the heavyweight division. It's got some relevance. But now with Hergovich out, obviously Zhang, who knows what's going to happen in terms of the opponent, the IBF, what's going to happen overall. We will have to see how this all shakes down. But the reporting that I've seen suggests that this will be rescheduled for a later date. Well, I hope so. Because I think Filip Hrgovic, this was going to be a very big moment for his career. And if his preparations haven't been good, they've been interrupted, through the death of his father, as has been reported, having the fight 6 months down the road or whatever it would be is going to be more beneficial for him. Because if he comes in underdone and, a very emotional time, the death of a family member, especially your father, that's him being fully focused, dialed in, because he's the huge favorite here against Zhang. Zhang, the southpaw out of China, 38 years old, hasn't really fought anyone on the level of a Filip Hrgovic, at least in the talent level. Hrgovic's level as well has not been completely proven out. And that's been the frustration of his career to date. He's been ready for a good step up for a couple of years, and now we're made to wait a little bit longer. And for Zhang, this Hergovich fight represents the biggest opportunity and path towards a title shot. So he would have been giving it everything in camp. And some of the stuff that was coming out of his camp, and you can see here on screen, so this is some footage here with his trainer, Sean George, Also, they had drafted in Joe Kusumanu, so he'd been in camp there. It looked like Zhang was focused, dialed in, he was ready to go. And Hergovich, well, it's a shame for him that this fight is now not happening when it was scheduled to happen. But let's hope that Hergovich doesn't lose momentum, because it feels like his career has kind of just been not quite going the direction people had hoped. And this is another setback of sorts, and obviously driven by an external factor. Hopefully there is still that fight down the line, something where you can get a real gauge of where he's at, because he is now training back in Croatia. So reporting from a number of weeks ago suggested he'd separated from Pedro Diaz, so he'd obviously trained under him as a pro for much of his pro career, and his style had been morphing into trying to be a big power puncher reliant on the right hand. So I kind of thought with the news that he was going to be taking it more back to basics, trying to use the height, the reach, his fundamentals, his good jab, using movement, looking more like the amateur version of Hergovich, who sometimes was compared to Vitaly Klitschko with the way that he fought and moved. He's gone away from that in recent years, but obviously trying to recapture some of that. And let's face it, at the top level, he's going to need to show more tools. He can't just be some guy with the right hand, because he'll come undone quickly at a higher level. But at least the Zhang fight was going to prove something this weekend, but now we wait. In terms of Zhang, well, we'll see what happens, but not holding my breath for a good fight. What do you make of this news? Disappointing to me, but it is what it is. This is boxing. These things happen. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.